Okay, so my name is Levi. This is my for my final presentation. I decided to do a podcast with some friends and some acquaintances within our little space, speaking on community and what community we are part of. So I will go first in terms of this. My name is Levi. Um, I am a part of the Black community as well as the Hispanic community, as well as the trans and gay community. So part of the LGBTQ. And for me, I'm gonna start speaking on the trans community and the problems within the trans community is that they would much rather argue with somebody over pronouns and the right pronouns rather than actually sit down and talk with somebody about the presence of pronouns and what what it means to have pronouns. What I mean by that is that let's say I'm at school and somebody walks up to me and decides to use she her pronouns. I use he him pronouns, and basically what somebody who is very adamant within the trans community would do was just basically attack them and like yell at them. My RA recently told me a story about somebody at the school who went by different pronouns and she approached him with just yelled at her and just basically degraded her, which kind of made her a little bit scared when she messed up my pronouns. And I said, no, 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 I would much rather educate you on pronouns because to me, not a lot of people are gonna know. They look at you, and if they see a girl, they see a girl. If they see a guy, they see a guy. Or if they're not too sure, some people would use they them pronouns. So it's just a matter of how they go about approaching you in a sense. And I would say, man, some advice on that, man. There's so much advice that you can give one person. I would have to say that maybe people should start oh, jeez, maybe people should start understanding a little bit more on like being approachable in a sense and being able to educate somebody rather than straight up going on the attack.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't know
Hmm.
if you guys would like to chime in on the situation. I'm even though you guys aren't a part of the community, I would love to have a discussion about it. So go
Well,
ahead.
Mm.
well. Hello. My mic not working. Hello.
Would you like to go first, or otherwise
Hello.
I can? Oh,
I don't think my mic's working right now.
Okay,
well,
Brett, go ahead.
in that case, honestly,
Let's
as
see
I
what's going
have
on here.
been, of course, it's very interesting, being friends with Levi because I'm conservative. So I don't
Uh.
necessarily like believe in everything like that.
Um.
However, I do my best to, be respectful and be, how should I say, cordial. It's very, hmm, I have noticed in my own community and everything like that, a lot of the time people will, let's say there's someone who isn't religious, for example, they're not like me, they're not necessarily principled about it, they just hate for fun. Yeah, understandable. um and a lot of times the big reason that they will be that way is because that they made a mistake and they got their head ripped off, uh as a term of speaking, and since then they've used that as a reason, because it's no longer just, oh, I'm confused about it. Now it's, those people don't deserve my respect. And a lot of the time, honestly, it feels much more like it feels a lot more like people are doing it almost as a trend or like a team they want to be part of, much instead of them being and actually being their identity. For example, I've seen people who apply one label to themselves and then another, looking for a box that fits them, when, unless I'm mistaken, the purpose of the movement was to be that the box that you fit in is the one, you know that you're comfortable in. You're supposed to be comfortable in your own skin, not switching skins out until you find one that you like the best on you. Because honestly, if you were just going to define yourself by how other people saw you and described you anyway, then you may as well just remain, a man or a woman.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. I I think today in today's day and age, the biggest example that I can produce is the idea of neopronouns and it being introduced, like Giger, Jim. I feel as if incorp like I'm not saying it's a bad thing because neopronouns are a real thing, and which I had to study on a lot. But a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily say trolls, but there are real people out there that use neopronouns to call themselves bunny
Mm.
self, like gorilla self, and everything. And
Right.
it's like it's it kind of contributes to that pronouns things because of somebody who is going into, like, let's say going into the idea of pronouns or seeing a video pop up. It's like they're seeing somebody calling themselves bunny self. That's like that, that would throw me off, even though I am part of the community. It would throw me off because I'm like, that's kind of weird. That's not really necessarily a pronoun, like he, him, they, them. And so a lot of people look towards this community and see, like, a lot, they see a lot of weird people be due to things like online and everything, and what's going on
Mm-hmm.
within the community is mostly negative most of the time, due to, like what Brett said, like, a lot of people would much rather chop your head off and spit it out than actually sit down and talk to you and come at you like an actual person. So
You know, it's interesting that you
big
say
O.
that because that was gonna be. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, that was gonna be one of my main things. I absolutely loathe when people of the community get mad at somebody for misgendering them or pronouncing them or whatever, because nobody knows you, especially if it's a brand new person. How are they supposed to know that's what you prefer? I feel like people of the community should work on the patience to deal with people that don't know them, for one, because there's been plenty of times I've seen somebody, I'm like, oh, that's a dude, and he's like, what do you mean? Oh, my bad. She's like, what do you mean? I'm not a guy, don't say this to me, I'm not that. That's very rude to you. And they go off on me. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I don't know you. I just addressed you how you looked. And which is another thing, controversial take, some people I feel like should use pronouns more to how they actually look. I understand you feel a certain way. I understand, I guess, like, you want to be addressed this way, but sometimes if you can't really, I feel like if you can't really pull off that look just yet, just quite yet, I feel like you shouldn't be upset when somebody mispronouns you. That's how I guess I should say it. Because if you look a certain way, you get addressed that way, then get very upset about it to somebody that doesn't know you. It's kind of, making them realize like, oh, these people, this community are kind of assholes and, dickheads about this whole situation because I don't know you and you got mad at me for this thing instead of you slowly being like, hey, I don't like that. Address me this way. My name is also this. And from now on, that's how I want to be addressed. It's okay if you slip up a couple times because I don't know you, but that's how I want to be addressed. And I feel like because of that stigma, which happens a lot with people these days, there's kind of like a split in people that do accept them because it's already hard enough for them to get accepted. There's a split with people that do accept them that are irritated sometimes by how they absolutely demand to be addressed a certain way, besides, informing somebody how they would like to be, addressed. And
Mm,
that's my take on that, certain problem.
mm. I can 100% see where you're coming from in terms of addressing yourself in the way you look, but sometimes people really don't have the money or
Mm-hmm.
insurance to achieve that look, achieve that special look
Mm-hmm.
for their pronouns, which is why a lot of people um which I kind of I look which no offense oh, I do disagree with that. I feel as if
Mm-hmm.
that people want to be addressed how they want to be addressed because it also leads to their gender dysphoria. That's like also why. And so I guess it's not a harmful mindset because it is your mindset and your opinion. But saying, "Oh, well, you should have your pronouns have the way that you look," it's kind of a bit harmful to the person because that's not really one how they want to be addressed. But
Well,
I do agree that they should not be motherfucking just yelling at somebody in
yeah.
terms of these are my pronouns, you better respect me, this and this. No, 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 no,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta come at somebody and say, my name is Levi. I'll put an example. So what I do at the beginning of every year when I have a teacher who is a new name,
Mm-hmm.
I always send up them an email before the classes start to introduce myself
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Hey, I know that my dead name is this, and it's this on the email as well as on the Moodle page, which is the page in which we turn in work. But I go by this, and I hope you can respect that." And I just keep it like that. And if they don't, then that's another problem within the administration because Regis College is supposedly a very open school who
Mm-hmm.
help um include people rather than exclude. But
Mm-hmm.
if they do, and they always end up doing that and always understanding, and that's like you just gotta come at a respectable manner. That's all. Like at the end of the day, my piece of advice to somebody is to come at a respectable way so you can earn that respect.
Okay, interjection though. When I was saying earlier about how people should just accept, I wasn't trying to. I corrected myself in my own way of saying it. I meant it as in they should be more acceptable to, being called a certain pronoun, being
Okay, I
mispronounced by
get.
mistake.
Okay,
Because if
I
obviously
understand.
you're trying to project this look, but you don't exactly do that because of your circumstance, which is understandable.
Right.
You should be more lenient towards people that mispronounce you. That was my take on that.
Right. Okay, I understand. Okay, I understand you now. Then, yeah, I 100% understand you
Hmm.
now.
But
Okay.
man,
Um, who would like to go next in introducing themselves and their communities?
me,
And we
I
can
got
speak on a
this.
topic
I
related.
got this.
All right, go
My
ahead. Go
name is
ahead, bro.
Big O. My name is Big O. I'm African American. I'm from Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi to be exact. And I'm from, as you know, the black neighborhood specifically out of African American. I know there's a bunch of different dialects. So I'm gonna say the black African American group. And my whole issue with our community that I hate a lot is that we do not trust each other, which is what I hate the most in this world. I hate that the people in my community will love to see each other prosper, will love to see each other do big things, will love to raise each other up and do all these amazing, phenomenal things in the world and life, but they will not, let's say, give $1 to help you do this, or will not exactly support you all the way. They will support you once you make it up there, and once you are already there through all the whole work and trials that you have to do. But they will. I hate that it's very hard to get them to help you get to that point to make it easier for you because we don't all trust each other. Obviously this has to do with deep rooted racism, because back in the day on the slave plantation they used to make us lie to each other and play each other and manipulate each other into getting what we wanted from each other, and it still has trauma down to this day. And I hate that it's such a big stigma now, because no matter what or who, if they're black, we love to see them at the top, but we struggle to support them. I don't like to get political, but fine example was Kamala Harris, black Indian woman, black woman, obviously in America in a high position. She made it there already. Nobody was really there to, support. Well, she had her family, everything. She made it there already, and she was trying to save us from a crazy predicament that's going to go down the next 4 years, and
If you
a
say so.
lot, a lot of side eye, bombastic side eye. Anyway, and a lot of African American men did not like her simply because she was a woman, and not only that, because she was a black woman. And I feel like a lot of black people too, black women too, actually, it was just black people in general. A lot of them did not support her as much as I felt like they should have. I understand that we really don't know her, right? And that we really don't kind of correlate to her, I guess, because she hasn't been in our community much or whatever. But I feel like we should have all did our own research on her, because a lot of people only made their opinions about her based off what the news gave them, and the news lie about people all the time. And other people on the internet, which weren't actual valid sources of information. I feel like if the black community would have just did research and realized who she was, and did and look more into her, that would have felt more obligated, or inclined to actually support her. And sheesh, and put her into the position of president. But that's just, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying I'm doing this on the aspect of supporting another black person, not as if she deserved to be up there, or you
Mhm.
know off the politicalness. I'm just saying that's an example I could provide for it. I feel like we should do better as a community to support each other versus just hating each other and not supporting each other.
Hmm. Brett, I know you had some words to say, so I will let you say as I think of some advice for our community.
Hmm. Well, my personal thoughts aren't fully done yet. I was typing them through. However, I will respond to a few of the things that um my friend Big O said. Now, as your point, you said we don't trust each other. Honestly, I think the opinion is, or in my opinion, I think a major issue is that or sorry, colored people. Whoever said people of color sounds any different, I don't care. It sounds the same to me. People of color, colored. Anyway, I digress. The problem with our colored community, myself being, a black Arab man, um,
You
is that
heavily
for
claimed it.
some reason minorities think that they are entitled to each other's respect and money simply because
Mhm.
our skin is the same color, which it is not. um the reason Kamala Harris lost is not because she's a black woman. The reason she lost is because she abandoned the working class as her voter base. She didn't address their concerns at all, and they went to the only other option they had. Black and brown people voted for her in large numbers, as large as any other Democrat. And it was not them that lost her the election. It was the white base, the moderates, who shifted from Democrat to Republican in a lot of counties. Um,
Interjection. It's not about the election. I was saying it was about the support of her. I felt like the black people
I
didn't.
understand. I'm building to it. I'm building to it. Um, People say, oh, black people never vote for a woman. Um, I knew she was going to lose the second Barack Obama came out, and talked to a group of black men and said, y'all just need to get over the fact that she's a woman, your misogyny and things like that. And that is one of the most condescending things a politician could have done. That was the biggest mistake he could have done. Because when you say that, oh, people didn't support her because she's a woman, which I'm sure it did happen. I'm sure it did. I think that's the only thing. Uh, you not only talk down to an entire group of people, however, you assume that they are both either unintelligent or too unintelligent, or they're too bigoted, or both, to look past their own biases for a second to vote in their own self-interest. I saw this in 2016, when Trump won, and a white woman lost her job because she said, you know if these blacks aren't able to vote in their own self-interest, maybe they shouldn't be able to vote for a few years so we can make the good choices for them. You see, the second that you think that you know better than someone, or that you think, even though there are definitely people who are uninformed, we all know that, but the second that you assume before you even meet that person that they're voting because of a certain way, or they're doing something, if the second you get it in your head, the only reason another black person could disagree with you because their hatred for you outweighs their love for themselves is when you make a mistake. Where else do we see this in our community? Um, ah, Funerals is a big one. Unfortunately, the black community, especially, is plagued by gun violence in a way that no other community in America is. Not a single other one. Other communities, like the white community, has more guns than us, a lot more. Um, Other communities has more of different kinds of crime. Other communities are poor. However, black communities have the worst level of gun violence. And then when you hear the funeral, it's, oh, my baby, he didn't do anything. He was an angel. No. Um, and he was a criminal, and he was allowed to escape punishment of the police uh, because people said, oh, don't call the police, don't do this, don't do that. It's very interesting that murder, theft, arson, in a lot of cases, what's it called? Even sexual abuse inside of black families is something that's family business and shouldn't be talked about. But God forbid one of those kids comes out as gay. The entire neighborhood's going to know it, and then they're going to they're going to be out on the street. And like I said before, I'm a conservative, so I can understand that, even if I think it's a bit extreme. But I have principles. So if my son was a murderer, that would weigh quite a bit heavier than if, he had a few errant beatings of the heart. Uh, our community is, it's almost, we are as a almost as a group, a racial subgroup in this country, traumatized and frozen in the slavery and reconstruction era. We can't see past today. We can't do anything. Um, and we haven't outgrown the mindset that anything we have is going to be taken apart. In the 1800s, late 1900s, passing the civil rights movement, I can understand that. You are being held back and pushed down at every step along society. Everything you do, the white man's keeping you down. But you can't say that anymore. It's not it's not as true as it once was. I can't think, honestly, of the last time that
Okay,
being
but that
black stopped
still
me from getting
implements
in
that
trouble.
it's a truth to it. You say it's not as true as it once was. There's still a truth to it. What do you
Yes,
mean?
but listen, right? Listen to this, right? If if I say, "Oh man, I'm black, so I was born disadvantaged, so it
Which is
makes it
true.
harder for me to save money." That's true. But if you found out that every day I was buying 5 scratch cards after work, you think, maybe I'd be able to get myself to a slightly better situation. At a certain point, you have to take it upon yourself. When you are, that's the word I was looking for, a child. When you're a child and someone takes something from you, you're powerless. And you can say, "Oh, why don't I have my toy? Oh, why don't I have this? Why don't I have that?" It's
Hmm.
because someone else kept it from you. But when you're an adult, at a certain point, unless something crazy is happening, honestly, you really only have yourself to blame. We are,
But what if you
I'm
aren't
not,
given the
we're not
ability to get
entitled
it
to
back?
anything. That is true for a group of people. It's not even a small group. It's a moderate sized group of people. It's a good sized group of people. I'd say maybe 5 to 10% of Americans. It is impossible for them to make it out of their situation. But you, especially because you're a very successful blue collar man, you're college educated, you worked for NASA, so you know, right? The people who grew up with you and around you had many of the same opportunities that you did, but you're doing better than most of them. And what do they do when they see your success? Do they go, "Oh, I need to see how he did it. Maybe ask him for advice." No, you know what they do? They ask you for money. They talk about you behind your back. They see what you have and they want to take it from you instead of trying to get it like you and having both of you grow together.
Wait,
And
wait,
I know
interjection,
the
interjection,
adage of
interjection.
the
Is this like your own thing now? Besides, you're not talking about what I was talking about anymore. You're talking about your own thing right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've sort of migrated slightly over into the issue of the flea mentality we have in the black community. I was just
Mhm.
sort of building off of that. I use everything as a stepping point. Have you guys all heard the adage of the flea?
No. What is
No,
that?
sir.
Inform
All
me.
right, so the adage of the flea here is, let's say you have fleas, right? They can jump 3 feet in the air. They can jump crazy distances.
Hmm.
They can do, and crazy things by bug standards. So if you take 2 fleas, a man and one flea, and you put them in a jar, they're going to keep hitting their heads. So they're going to jump lower. And then when they have kids, their kids will hit their heads, uh, and on top of the lid of the jar. So they're going to jump lower. 3 or 4 generations coming around, you'll have baby fleas who won't jump higher anymore. And when even if you let them out of the jar, they're only ever going to jump to that height because they believe themselves now to be incapable of jumping any higher. But the jar is gone. There's nothing holding them back anymore. The jar is gone. But now
Hmm.
that it's been ingrained, they're still keeping those same behaviors, even though it doesn't keep them safe anymore and it only holds them back.
Hmm.
We can see this a lot, even in people who are more well adjusted, like I like to believe myself and my friend group to be, even if that might be egotistical. Even us, when I see a black person committing a crime on the news or
Hmm.
a Muslim doing, some sort of attack or, something like that, even though that's less than 1% of us, let's say, I feel a deep sense of shame. And that comes from when we were slaves, the group punishments we would receive and things like that.
Hmm.
But I have to unlearn that. I have to understand that I'm not responsible for what someone does halfway around the world, or someone does a city over, even in the same town, because I don't know them. I didn't do that crime. My black identity should not be one that is defined by failure and servitude. It should be one that's defined by excellence, the excellence that I put forward. Every other group that I can think of defines themselves in a lot of ways, especially white people. White people define themselves by their accomplishments. And at least a lot of the black people I know subconsciously define themselves by the failures of other people and ascribe those failures to themselves. A lot of times you'll hear, "Oh, he set us back." Set who back? Why did he set you back? You weren't involved. Um, it's just not right. It's not right at all.
I feel like the set us back thing. This is just a quick little tidbit here, but it's more like a wave effect, a ripple effect is what I'm trying to say. And because once one person does something, then because of a lot of other races see this one person do this thing, all of a sudden they're going to associate like, oh, because this one does it, that means all of them do it, and then they're going to start treating us eventually accordingly because of this one person. That's why I feel like that's still a thing today, and why that's still a strong belief in most people's mind. Like, oh, this person set us back because now everybody else is going to assume this about us, and this is just going to be a constant in our lives from now on. But that's just that.
For me, I have nothing to say else to say on that matter. I feel as if both you and Bread kind of spoke to what I was speaking about, but I would like to provide some advice on your idea, Big O, about trust within the Black community. I feel as
Mm-hmm.
if actually I'm not really sure on how what good advice towards young black individuals would be, because it's gonna like you said, it stigmatizes from a lot of trauma, and family trauma builds to a point where once you get to a last person, it just explodes, and you can do stuff about it, but most of the time they feel as if they're helpless and can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as if how advice would go about that would be, I sound very positive in this, but to just possibly open their minds a little bit, open their minds to introducing themselves to new ideas, as well as like new people who are not like them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
would you like to, do you have any advice? I mean, would you like to provide any advice for them on like advice that you think would be good?
Mm. Say it again. I kind of don't understand the question a little bit.
No, I'm just asking you. So you spoke about an issue within the
Mm-hmm.
black community with it being surrounded by trust,
Oh,
right?
advice on how to trust you. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
advice on that idea of trust and how to get trust building again within the black community and everything.
All right. I feel that because this is so deeply rooted in trauma, this is going to be something that's going to happen a couple years down the line with this new generation of black people we have now. Because I guess the more conservative or older black people still so prominent today. It's going to sound morbid, but it is what it is. We have to wait for them to die out for the more understanding generation of black people to come into play, and the more cooperative
Mm.
ones to be able to understand people's situation does. Because a lot of older, I feel like that's the same thing like with the gender thing. 9 times out of 10, it's always an older person or somebody who grew up on those older morals about them, like, oh, that's disgusting. I hate them. I'm not finna do all this, making it a bigger issue than one that actually is. I feel that once this newer generation gets in this stride, we're gonna be able to look and realize, like, okay, we are in control of our own fates. We are in control of our own destiny. We are going to be able to lock in and understand each other a lot more and empathize a lot more and be able to support each other a lot better before, because now all of us know, like, oh, back then they had all this going on because they had no support system. They had nobody actually willing to help them out and reach out to them. But now we, as the newer generation of black people, we clearly see like, oh hey, let's talk. How's your day going? Like, what's going on with this? Like, oh, you want to do that? Bet I'll support you. Where can I buy? Or bet, what can I do to help you out? I don't have money to support you, but I know a person that can do this for you and that help you elevate even more. I feel that it's gonna have to be in the future, not far in the future.
Hmm.
I give it 10 years. 10 years, maybe like 20 years max. 10, 20 years. Once a
Yeah.
lot of them like die out, like literally like die, and a lot of them, because even them today are starting to understand and be a lot more like
Yeah.
forgiving and understanding of things because they know that the world today is changing. They know that there's a rift, and our people, they know we need to do more in order for us to do better and
And
have better lives. Go ahead.
and black people don't like change.
They don't like
Nobody,
change.
nobody,
Nobody likes change,
nobody,
really.
nobody, nobody loves change at all. But the way that I see it is a lot of black individuals. I see this within my family all the time. Is that they're not willing to accept change due to their minds being so. This is how it was when I grew up. This is how it was when I was a young adult, and this is how it is. This is how it was when I was turning into an older individual. And the fact that it's starting to change as I'm an older individual and I went through all of that through my life, I can't. I can't do it. I can't change. I can't change. All right.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's my whole
Um.
ordeal for this discussion. You got
Mhm.
anything else, Brad?
Yes, I do. I actually never got to do my one. I was just
Jesus,
Yeah.
thinking
bro.
about yours.
Please introduce yourself and what communities you represent.
Okay.
Rigo, I'm also have to come back to you because you're leaving out some of your communities or a
Mm,
little bit.
Who, me?
So
all right.
yeah, I feel
All right.
you're black, but there's a lot. You're straight. Um,
Mm,
you're in the video game community.
Mhm. I thought it would just be one that I kind of want to primarily
No,
focus.
this is like a whole thing until we're like beat out or something, or just I just feel as if it's done.
Hmm.
hmm
You can speak on any community that you think you are a part of or feel as if you are a part of. Go ham. I know I'm gonna do that. So
Okay.
please do that as
All
well
right,
if you would like to.
all right,
Not forcing
little.
you.
Okay, little fat dog in the bowl. Talk.
All
Yeah, please
right.
introduce yourself and yeah, go ahead.
Privet.
Oh
Assalamu
my
alaikum
god,
warahmatullahi
bro.
wabarakatuh. All right. Listen. So my name is Zahid, but they call me Bread. I hope you're doing well, whoever is going to watch this in the future.
Professor
I
Pellegrino.
am Professor Pellegrino. Oh,
Pellegrino.
Italian. I like
Pellegrino.
Italian. Mm. All
Wouldn't
right.
it be
Anyway,
Pelaverde?
no.
Well, I should say Professor Pellegrino and Professor Lacella. So,
Lacella. Hey, Miss Lacella. Which ones are? What are the genders?
Professor Pellegrino is a woman.
Uh huh.
She's my professor now, and Professor Lacella is also a woman, but she's was my humanities teacher before she had to sadly step away for a little bit. But she might listen to this as
Mm.
well.
Okay.
All right. Well, hello, professors. Hello, professors.
How y'all doing?
Now, I am a black Arab American Muslim.
What?
However, I come here today not as a Muslim or as an Arab American or Arab, but truly I'm here as a American
Oh my
because
god.
honestly, I look around. Please let me speak.
Please let him speak. Go
Okay,
ahead. You're okay. Go ahead. Go
I'm
ahead.
just making sure. I was going. All right. So honestly, I look around at our society. As you guys both live in America, the two of you professors, and as to my two friends here, and I look around at it, and I see a society that is both thriving and failing at the same time. We are achieving heights in our real GDP, but also have more homeless people than ever. Uh, we are, going to the moon and providing free internet access and going to Mars and things like that. However, you go to any major city, and you'll see, the infirm walking the streets. You'll see veterans begging for money on the roads. Um, on one hand, you have this undeniable progress, but in a lot of ways we are backsliding, but not to We are not backsliding to the old America, as some people think, a more fascistic America, the McCarthyist America, the one that put Japanese people in internment camps. No, I believe, in fact, we're going to have a situation beyond that, because in the McCarthyist America, um, you were free if you were part of certain groups, but we're reaching an America where no one is free at all. Rich or poor, prince or pauper, white or black, everyone is going to be unfortunately enslaved and enraptured by the oligarchical class. Honestly, as I look at this America, the country that I love, I think it can be fixed, but not without drastic measure. So, I honestly think that we have to enforce order and preserve liberty, but we have to do that by starting at the bottom, because there's a rot that is infesting the country and it has to be torn out at the root. Uh, you do not reason with a tumor, you excise it. And I'm not talking about any racial group or ethnic group or sex or anything or any of those groups. I'm talking about something worse. I'm talking about a breakdown of the moral fabric of the country, which allows everything else to fall apart. And I actually have a plan that I'm setting forth to fix it. The first step in everything, in any society, the first thing that you have to do is repair the household. In America, our divorce rate, according to some estimates, is at 50%. That's not 50% of new marriages, or, it's kind of, up in the air how they got that number, but it's 50%. Half of all marriages end in failure. Um, More children are aborted than ever. More children are in orphanages. How many children grow up without fathers or mothers, and this and that? Whether they lose them to, prison, which is a horrible thing in my own community, or the parents overdose, which is caused by our opioid epidemic, or they lose them just because the parent decided to walk away and leave. We have to make the household strong. And I believe that we will do that uh, by just encouraging better things through our media. I'm not calling for censorship necessarily, but I think that just a slight push of the status quo, because honestly, I believe that uh, the society and the government of a country sort of co-emanate from each other. The laws passed down shape the culture, and that culture influences people who work for the government, and so on and so forth. Um, there are some things that I would ban. Probably the first thing that would go, or become more difficult, is that I would restrict social media of all kinds, and definitely any kind of pornography to be impossible to access, or near as much, for anyone who is under the age of 18. Both of those things have caused insane mental health crises in our youth. The rise of easy pornography, as well as insane content from both, how should I say, both the alt right and the alt left media, have driven our youth to such extremes where these poor children have no true identities of themselves. They are told what to think, and they sort of accept it. If someone's a so called expert, you'll see them believing it and just sort of drinking the Kool Aid. You'll see a child, mind you, not, a 17-year-old or whatever. You'll see someone who's 11, 12, having strong opinions about things like immigration, or the petrodollar, and then you talk to them, and then you realize that they're just parroting some propaganda that they've been fed, and that they don't know anything. Second, we have to shape our citizenry. Something that we should do is that this will go from the household to the school. After these children, of course, are taken care of, they're fed, and they are raised in a household where their parents love and respect one another, households where they understand that men and women are equally important, even if they serve different roles. Once they've seen two people respect each other, then they go to the school. And a lot of times in our schools, our school system, it it is good to be gentle with children. They are children, they are still learning. It benefits no one to harm a child if you want to teach the child. It's better to gently reprimand. However, we've gone so far in this that we, in fact, coddle children. They no longer are capable of making mistakes, because there are no mistakes any longer. There's no bad opinions, there's no errors they can make. There's only correct answers, and then answers which we also accept. Does the child, um, how should I say? Does the child think that, oh, perhaps I met one the other a while ago. Perhaps the child thinks that they are, a cat or something, and now the teacher cannot, calm them down a bit and say, you are not a cat. They will have to address the child as a cat, and uh, things of that sort.
Mm.
Further, the children are allowed to go about and do nothing in their entire day. There are people, entire swaths of the country, but this mainly starts with the children, and those children grow up into these sort of adults, where you ask them about their hobbies, and they are angry and offended with you, and not because that's personal to them, but because you ask them what their hobbies are, and there's nothing. All they do is swipe on their phone or go on the internet all day. They have no hobbies. They have no opinions. What music do they like? Whatever's trending on TikTok. What movies do they watch? They don't watch movies. They just scroll all day. Do they have any friends? They have 1,000 followers on Instagram, but when they are down and out, when their heart's hurting, they have no one they can turn to. And in this isolated world that we are forced to accept, is it any wonder that we are seeing children as young as 10, 11 commit suicide in record numbers? We are allowing our children to be swept up by a new wave of attacks from conglomerates such as the alcohol industry, illicit drug markets, as well as the nicotine industry with colored vapes and things like that. And
Mm.
so these children are growing. We are allowing the pharmaceutical companies. We stopped them quicker than we did with cigarettes, but for at least a decade, there was a common myth that marijuana had no adverse effects, and now we know that it stunts your physical growth. It literally shrinks your brain. It causes issues with your memory. It has all sorts of issues with your lungs. We know about the formaldehyde in vapes and this, that, and so forth. We have allowed the children of this country to be.
Interjection.
Oh, before I even get there, let me get the thought out, then I will let you do it. Also, the children, the things they are fed are absolute goop. These children, a lot of them grow up in food deserts where they eat food that we know is not just fattening, because fat, honestly, you can work off calories, but this food that they eat literally causes cancer and tumors. It causes health issues. It causes early onset dementia. We are seeing more people with dementia than ever. We're seeing people more with cancer than ever. We are seeing more children born with birth disorders like jaundice and autism than ever. And not because of any vaccines or anything, but because these pregnant women who just want to care for their children that are growing in them, they are forced to eat all sorts of poison and that floods their bodies. And there is nothing they can do. Scientists did a study and they found that every single human on planet Earth has plastic in their blood. Essentially, when I went to fix this country, I went to start at the very bottom, and I went to remove the poison from the children. I went to protect them at some point from the evil to the world, give them a solid education based in truth, and I want to give them area where they can grow without being oppressed or preyed on by the cruel adults, a place where children can truly be children and then develop into adults, not a place where children can be expected to perform on adult levels, given none of the freedom and then exploited at every term, whether it's exploited for their data, exploited for their bodies, exploited for their information, exploited for their money, everything. I will not allow our children to be sold any longer to anyone. Sorry, you were going to say?
Okay, yeah. Jeez. Holy smokes. I have no advice. Big O, what would you like to
Big, I
say?
wanted to say
Hey,
something. Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
man, he was cooking. The only thing I do have to say is about those adverse about effects about marijuana was that those effects only occur after using the drug, not even the drug, the herb, the medicinal, years and years and years and years and years upon use, and absolutely.
See, this is what I'm talking about. That's actually incorrect. A
Mm-hmm,
lot of drugs, all of them,
mm-hmm,
as well as alcohol,
mm-hmm.
if they have any adverse effects, the ones that do, it affects you from day one. But the effects are compounding. That's why they get worse over time. For example, would you drink a soda that gave you cancer, even if just a little bit, if you knew 100% that it would?
How much
You
cancer?
wouldn't, because you wouldn't.
How much cancer?
Uh,
Depends on the soda, bro. Everybody's different. You can't make that assumption about everybody. Some people need marijuana, just like some people just want soda.
No,
What can
no,
you?
people do not need marijuana. They want marijuana because they have not been
Well,
given a
they.
healthy outlet.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, 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 whoa,
Bro,
whoa.
no, listen,
They
listen to this.
need it. They
Have you
need
heard
it because
Hold on, hold on, hold
doctors
on,
and
hold on.
hospitals
have
will
you
not prescribe them certain things to give them. That's like the only thing that they can afford, and only things that they can get. So absolutely, they will need that. You can't just say people don't need that. Some people do need that because of their
we
situation.
are clearly talking about here. We are clearly talking about people who are otherwise healthy. Interjecting with
Well,
a
you
group of
didn't
people, a
say that.
subset, which is
You didn't
less
say
than one.
that.
I am clearly talking about in my example people who are otherwise normal, otherwise healthy. However, they have been damaged by society. People who would normally be healthy.
So how can they be
I'm not talking.
okay? So this is the thing. You just said you're talking about normal people, but then you said people that are damaged by society. So how can they be normal if they're damaged? I'm talking. That's what I'm saying. That's why I was confused. That's where the disconnect is happening.
I understand. So I'm talking about people who, let's say, if they were raised in a better place,
Uh
they
huh.
would grow up to be healthy, productive members of
Hmm.
society. However, due to the situation in which they are put, they grow up to be violent, untrusting of others, cruel, and things like that. That's who I'm speaking of. I'm speaking to our damaged youth who a lot of times feel betrayed by the country that they've grown up in.
Hmm.
Where was I? Oh, right. I was in the schools there. Oh, before I go that, they said mentioned the marijuana. Some people need it because they have no access to antidepressants and things such as that. That's an aside. What I was speaking of when I said nobody needs it, there was a study done with rats. If you put a rat in a cage with nothing else but two things of water, one with a drug in it, and one without a stimulant drug in it, the rat will always choose the stimulant drug. However, if you put a rat in a cage with other rats and toys and balls, things it can play with, tons of sensory things and things like that, that rat will almost never choose the water. Um, and I'm talking about less than 1%, because
Okay.
when people do those things, they use it to escape from where they are. These aren't the ways that people use drugs now. People, the way even people drink nowadays is not the way people drank in the 1920s and 30s. Even though there was alcohol abuse then, the widespread nature where being an alcoholic was something, being a drunk was something to be ashamed about. Now, if you even walk within 5 miles of a college, if you threw a stone, you would hit 15 alcoholics. And it's something which is celebrated and enjoyed because only blacking out once or twice a week from alcohol is seen as moderation by people. We are in a bad situation. There comes a point when being accepting of the way people live, with being accepting of the way people do things is bad. And things that are bad for one person are bad for society because people have to interact with that person. Um, and that weighs everything down. All right. After we repair our children in the homes and we repair them in the schools, what do we do further? Now we have to fix our nation as a whole, well, our communities mainly. Now, crime as itself is a symptom of a fractured order. Crime almost invariably is a symptom and not a cause. You can name any crime,
Hmm.
nearly any crime, and I can point to that it is a symptom, not a cause. Crime happens when things are bad. Crime does not cause things to be bad, is what I am trying to get at here. And honestly, I think the solution that we have been applying lately in our approach to crime is in the complete wrong direction. Um,
Question:
Now, I am not, I'm sorry,
can you explain the crime part where you're saying crime? You said crime doesn't make things.
is a symptom, not a cause. Yes, crime doesn't make things bad. Crime happens because things are bad. For example, let's say you have a let's say you have a low income community, right? And you
Hmm.
have people who go around, let's do a light crime, they're vandalizing, they
Hmm.
break windows.
Hmm.
Because those windows are now broken, because let's say those windows are broken because they were broken by a group of kids who were bored because their local what's it called, field got shut down, the community center, it got shut down, so they have nothing to do, so they're idle. They go around and break windows. Because those windows are broken, that is directly linked to an uptick in crime. That has been directly linked. If you can walk down the street and you see broken windows, and those windows are broken and they stay broken for weeks and weeks, you know that that neighborhood will see a measurable uptick in crime. This is something I wish I had the statistics on for myself, but is a real thing known as the broken windows phenomenon. And because those windows are now broken and crime increases, now those children who previously were bored walking around can no longer walk around safely because this area may be controlled by a criminal element. And what do you do when your area is controlled by a criminal element and you don't have a way out? You join that criminal element. So something as simple as the community park being closed down for austerity measures can lead, in fact, to increase in gang-related activity, which increases gang violence. If you don't
Hmm.
give people a way out, they will create one. People need, uh, freedom and things like that. People need to. People have a sort of natural amount of energy they need to expel. Um, and their minds
Mm.
need to be challenged
Okay, so what
further.
about
So what I
the
believe,
people in the rich neighborhoods that still do crime?
interestingly enough, it's actually caused by a lot of the same things. They themselves are also trapped, but I'll
Hmm.
get to that point later.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, the things I believe to resolve crime, most crime in America, for example, um, as I said, I support. I don't know if I said it. I do support expanding mental health access, making. I believe that in the free market and everything, but I also believe that if the government is to tax us, then there should be a minimum standard of living guaranteed, so that if you need mental help, you can go get it. There's always someone to talk to, at the very least. If you managed to reduce if we just disregard suicide just for a moment and just take gun violence into effect, if you were able to reduce gun violence and those gangs in those like major cities by even uh like 25%, you would see almost a 50% decrease in gun violence across the country. Because gun violence, unlike the news actually makes it seem, is actually not as major of a problem as it is. Outside of maybe 7 major cities in America, it's basically unheard of, outside of like a small spattering here or there. The issue mainly is that our cities, due to decades of redlining and oligarchs interrupting the free market to line their own pockets, leading to an unbalanced and unfair system where people are forced into poverty and enslaved. Um, if not for those things, then truly gun violence would not be an issue. Um, So I honestly support an overhaul of a lot of our cities to make them
Hmm.
more walkable, more accessible,
Hmm.
more public parks, and more community centers so children have something to do. Now, that will get rid of the inflow of criminals, or at least it'll majorly reduce it. But what do you do about the ones that are already there? I actually support an increase in police funding. I say that we should train police much better and pay them more. Now, imagine, put yourselves in the boots of a police officer. You put
Hmm.
on your vest, and every day, let's say you serve in a city, you have no idea if you're going to come home that day or not. If we use the city of Philadelphia, the one I call home as an example, in the worst areas, it is more dangerous to walk 3 blocks through there than it would be to uh, walk down the street in some of the terrorist-ridden areas of the northern African regions. It is more dangerous to be an American citizen in some of these areas than to literally walk next door to ISIS fighters, which is a massive disgrace. We must, um, you have to use both the olive and the arrows in this situation. The people who are innocent, you must be gentle with them, you must care for them, but the criminal element must be crushed. Um, they ruin our country. There is no benefit to them. All they do is take. They take from me. They take from you. Excuse me. Drink some water. And more often than not, they abuse um, the racial sympathies which many hold. For example, for some reason, every time, and now this happened before, but especially since 2020, every time a black person is killed by a police officer, people are marching in the streets before the body camera footage has come out. Before, not after, before. And the thing is, for most of these incidents, once you watch the body camera footage, you realize that the officer had no choice to shoot or they would have died. I'm not saying that people are not murdered by the police. I am not saying that. I'm under no illusions about the state of our corrupted law system. However, if you hold the opinion, or no, not hold the opinion, if you observe the fact of how dangerous some of these cities are, and then you say our police officers are unnecessarily violent because they're overstressed, underfunded, and undertrained, and you think the solution is somehow to take the money away from those departments instead of giving them more funding to hire more people to spread the load thinner, to hire specialists in certain things, excuse me, and to give them better training and equipment, then you are a fool who does not properly grasp the reality of the situation. The police do much more good than they do harm. Even if every single police related shooting in America, if you line them all up together, you will easily see that 90% of them are justified. We cannot let the outliers make us make the problem worse. America's approach to police in the last few years has been someone who's got a scab on their arm. And then every time it starts to heal, they pick at it and they pick at it and they pick at it. I myself was robbed by a homeless person when I was working a different job when I was in Philadelphia. And I had a tablet stolen from me, and I went to the police office, the police headquarters over there to, not headquarters, but a precinct to file a report. And they were using typewriters and computers from 1995 because their budget would not allow them to upgrade. They did not have the money to. They didn't. All they had the money for were uniforms, some of which the police officers had to pay for themselves, gasoline for the cars, which any damage that happened, some of it would come out of the officer's own pocket. For the recording camera they used to capture my testimony, they were using a camera from 2008. It was just aged. They could help me as much as they can, but they can't help me if they can't even help themselves. All they If they have no other tools which they cannot afford, then their only tool is violence. And as we all know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Second, we have to use the police in a way that's not just as ruthless enforcers of our crime. They have to be more embedded in our communities. And I would support and increase their police funding drastically, and increase so drastic, in fact, that if you walk down a street in a city, you would see a police officer, at least one, no matter where you turned. You would always see one. They would be posted, every other street corner or something. There would always be someone somewhere. You would not wait an hour after you called them to get help, because that has happened to people that I know. You will never gain safety by getting rid of the things that make you safe. Now, another problem with crime, and I pivot into my third point now. Um, America has an immigration problem. Now, I am not heartless, and I do not think that these immigrants are criminals. I believe many illegal immigrants are escaping awful situations and they have no choice. If someone would jump over barbed wire and evade guns and dogs and cartels and things like that to get to the border, then they are fleeing something awful, which I would never wish upon anyone to go through. However, it's not sustainable. We cannot take in unlimited amounts of people. The money is not there. It's just not possible. We cannot care for these people, not all of them. What I would do is that I would overhaul the immigration system so that people who were coming in would not be waiting 5, 10 years to hear back, just to hear that they got denied. I would not be doing that. My system, ideally, you would get a reply back within 30 to 60 days. So you would know pretty well. And also, I would only allow a certain amount of immigrants in per year. And we would have to put a stem to illegal immigration. Because even if these people are innocent, a lot of the times they are paying upwards of $10,000, $15,000 to flee across the border illegally. And if you know how many illegal immigrants cross the border every day, you can quickly in your head add up the millions and millions of dollars which these crime lords are raking in, um, making profit off of the evil that they cause. So a strong border, in fact, would go very far in lessening the harm at home. What's a good way to say this? Let's say you
You
had
want
your
a border
neighborhood
for
and
the
it had a
right
border.
reasons.
I'm sorry.
I said you wanted a border for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons. I get it.
Yes. Um, I in a lot of ways, I at a certain point you have to you have to make the hard decision. And the hard decision is that you cannot save everyone. Unfortunately, you just cannot save everyone.
I agree.
All of the illegal immigrants who are currently in America, and I mean illegally, not they not they were here and they've gone through the papers and because of our own system they've been caught up. I mean the people who came in illegally uh and things like that, and we know that. I believe that they should be deported, not because they are bad people or anything like that, but because a lot of the money that is spent on them could really be spent on processing legal immigrants. And it would be much better to process the legal immigrants who are here and get a steady. Um, Imagine if I got rid of the current illegal immigration system or the immigration system where people were sort of either forced into these cages like rats when they're fleeing these murders in their homes, or they're forced to like scurry around and accept, these awful jobs, to a system which lets through, I'd say, a large amount of people. I'm not saying like 1,000 people a year, maybe a million or so. I'm not sure how many we can take. I haven't run the numbers on this myself, but a large group of people, and those people are guaranteed housing, education, and everything. But that's if they do it correctly. You can't do. It's the same system with the police. You can't do one or the other. You cannot have a strong border but no process for people to come over legally. You have to have one to come over legally. You have to make sure their rights are maintained. You have to make sure they are respected as people. Further, another thing I would do to stem the immigration problem, I would designate these cartels rightfully as narco terrorists. Our neighbors to the south, the Mexican people, the hardworking, good natured. Have you ever met a Mexican person? They are very sweet and hardworking and kind people. And whenever they come from, the heartland of Mexico, they have all these awful stories. I have heard people tell me how they saw people murdered in front of them. And this election cycle, they had maybe 40 politicians murdered. Mexico is currently controlled on every level by the narco terrorist state, and they have to be taken down. They have to be. Now, I understand that a lot of times we have wounds, psychological ones from the war on terror. However, this is different because unlike fighting the concept of narco terrorism, I believe that we should fight for a cartel-free Mexico and then stop there. We need a Mexico that is ruled by its own government, that has strong sovereign borders, and that the criminals cannot cross. Because if you have a strong Mexico which can defend its own borders, and even if they need our help for it, that ends a lot of the illegal guns that are coming into the country. That ends almost a ton of the illegal drugs that are coming into the country. Because a lot of times these immigrants, the illegal immigrants, these people, they say, "Oh, I can't afford, the $15,000, to get into the country." Well, that's fine. You and your family can get in for free, but you have to carry this many drugs for us. You have to carry like 3 kilos or something. Hide it here, get it to them, and then you're free to go. That's your debt paid. And if you don't, if you say no now, we'll kill you. So either give us the money or you die. That's the choice that they have to make. I want to free these people from that choice forever, because I guarantee you that they aren't coming here because they just love America so much. They are coming here because they have nowhere else to go. Further, number three, the subsection, I honestly think that we need to reform our own government once we have a strong border, a strong culture of cultivating, raising a loving family with respectful children who are informed and able to take on the world, who are educated. We need to change the way our government is. A lot of the problems in America currently come from a government that has too much power, that has overstepped the bounds too many times, that has done too many has, whenever faced with a choice between two decisions, has chosen the one that would line the politicians with the most money rather than or fixing the extant issues in our country. The first and biggest one is I would seek a restoration of the states' rights. This has become sort of controversial recently because Donald J. Trump has sort of when he appointed some conservative Supreme Court justices, they overturned the Roe v. Wade and then upheld something called the Dobbs decision, which is the one that was made, and that made abortion an issue of the states being to choose. But this is actually the best outcome because now people who think alike can pick a state and live in it. Um, and then that is the way that that state will be run. No more will people's rights be held up in the air. For decades, the Democrats had multiple times, multiple trifectas, multiple Supreme Court super majorities where they could have at any time enshrined abortion rights into law. Even if I don't support that, that's something they could have done. And what did they choose to do when they had the chance to sign it into law? What they did was that they used it as a carrot and stick, and they blackmailed. If they're talking about women, they blackmailed women. They don't care about them. They blackmailed them, saying, "Look, you either vote for us so we can keep doing this to you, or you're going to lose your rights." That's what they said. They said, "Vote for us or else." They threatened us. They weaponized the political platform. They they drifted further left on social issues to make the Republicans drift further right, and then they turned them like a weapon. And they said, "Look, you either do this or we let them loose on you." A way we can see this is after this most recent election, when Kamala Harris lost. How quick were many Democrats to remove things like pronouns from their bios in a lot of websites, professional or otherwise? How quick were they to say, "Well, maybe we?" They described supporting, transgender and LGBT rights as pandering to insignificant communities. They were so quick to abandon you. Um, but people worship them. That's because we've given them too much power. The federal government should be little more than something to help the 50 states organize and then organize the army. The states should more be closer to 50 individual governments which closely cooperate and then work with the federal government on some things, rather than one government with 50 subcategories. A lot of this can be seen in what's a good example? Ah, even though I support people wearing their seatbelts when they drive, when that happened, a lot of states didn't want to do it because the state actually has its own rights. It can say, "No, I don't want to make that a law." But what did the government do? The federal government said, "Either you do this or we withhold your funding," which is not correct. It is a total abuse of power, and it is not how this country should be run. The government has done other things. Um, Whenever it has propped up banks, which are known for the corrupt practices, and they underfined ones when they are caught out doing them. Think about 2008 and the financial market crash. Think about a lot of those banks that are still existent today that caused that crash. They call it the financier's last resort. When a big company fails and employs tons of Americans, when it goes under, the government's going to come out and bail them out. But the government can't do that because the government has no money. Think about it. The Federal Reserve, because of how it exists, only has what money the banks put in it. So if the government it only has the money the banks have, the banks have no money, where are they getting that from? They're printing it. And when they print it, inflation goes up, which devalues the currency. So you know who pays for it? When that bank that mismanaged our money goes under, you know who pays for it? Me and you. They steal our money to line their pockets. And when they spend too much of their stolen money, they make us pay for it again. And then if we have some money saved up and we want to withdraw it from the system and buy gold or something, they charge you a tax on different things. It gets to a point where, let's say, for example, let's say, for example, you had a brokerage account and you bought some stocks, right? Let's say you had a brokerage account, you purchased some stocks, and then you sold them. Well, you have to pay a capital gains tax for any profit you made. And then when you spend that, you have to pay a sales tax. But then comes on the end of the year, you have to pay both an income tax a lot of the time, and then you have to pay a state income tax as well as any of the other fees. It's come to the point where the government has taxed the same dollar that they devalued 5 or 6 times to the point where you have nothing left to spend. And a lot of that, unfortunately, comes from our government being unable to commit or unwilling to commit to one form of economic governance. You hear the Democrats pay lip service to socialism. Excuse me, let me drink some water. And the Republicans pay lip service to capitalism, where really it's the state capitalism that we both adhere to. We're closer to the USSR than the original United States in a lot of ways. Now, think of it like this, right? Let's say I'm starving. People are starving. They need food stamps. They need healthcare and things like that. But the government never does anything to address the root cause of why rent's so high, why food's so expensive. So if a food is so expensive that people cannot afford it, and you give them money to buy the food, all you're really doing is lining the pockets of big businessmen who are charging them more. So what they are directly doing is taking the money that you and I earn through taxes out of our pockets, um, giving us back. They take $1 from us, give us back a dime, tax us on the dime, and then take the 99 cents that they made and put it in their pocket, and then say that they were doing the right thing. If you do not eliminate the root problem in these economic cases, if you don't find why houses are getting so expensive, if you don't, it's mega conglomerates, by the way. Houses are so expensive because we are letting major companies buy up all the land and that they're never going to live in. Um, and we are letting, and the reason they get away with it is because we let politicians, we let politicians own stock. In many countries, this is illegal, but in America, we have no bribery because we call it lobbying. If you do not get rid of the root causes, you are not. All welfare ends up doing is subsidizing the problem and perpetuating it. There are a few people right now, like our two major presidential candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Even though Trump won, um, Donald Trump is planning on putting a 10% tariff on everything imported to America. This will bring some people in, some jobs in. However, for most businesses, what they are going to do is increase prices for the end consumer to make up the difference. Because if everyone does it, where else are they going to go? Second, Miss Harris was going to enact, I believe it was a, was it a, I believe it was a 75% capital gains tax. Oh no, a tax on unrealized capital gains. So people will be taxed on money they haven't even made. And people are going to say, well, the tax is on people who make above $100 million a year. How does that affect me? I make $30,000 a year. And no, you think it doesn't affect you directly because you're not the one getting taxed, but it does. If the people, if all the rich people left, right? If they leave, which they do in a lot of cases, like take China for example, a lot of their rich people are fleeing the country because of how insane the Chinese government is at going after their money. If those people leave or somewhere else, then those jobs will follow them, and then we will continue importing more than we export. That's what a deficit is, by the way, because we're spending more money than we take in. And once you do that, then you have effectively trapped yourself in a cycle. Well, the rich people are leaving, so we need to raise taxes, and the higher taxes make the rich people leave. And then the poor people who are stuck at the bottom don't have any money. Why? Because there's no jobs and they're getting taxed. So what do you have to do? You have to increase welfare. And how do you increase welfare? You either print money, devaluing the currency further, or you raise taxes, taking what little they have left. And the third one is that small businesses are being crushed left, right, and center in favor of these semi-politician owned major conglomerates, because is no way currently for us to stop them at every level. There's this thing like what people call globalism. Some people use that as an anti-Semitic dog whistle, but that's not what I'm saying here. By globalism, I mean the idea that we must do everything to further our position on the world's economy, rather than seeking the immediate good of helping our people and strengthening our nation so that it does not have to go further. I believe in charity. I believe in helping others. I believe in intervening in genocide. What I don't believe in is a single dollar going to another nation's military while there are homeless veterans on the street. If I am to strengthen our military, then I will strengthen it at all levels. I do not want there to be a single dollar going to another nation's military while our veterans are going through the suicide epidemic that they're going through right now. Did you know that our nation, our Air Force, for a $300, I'm getting these numbers a little bit mixed up in my head, but for a $300 bag of nuts and bolts, $300 bag of nuts and bolts, they pay $40,000 for it. Why do they do that? Well, the government has to go with the lowest bidder. So you'd think this would solve the issue. But what the government employees do, the senators like Nancy Pelosi, what they do is that they call their friends in the industry. They say, hey, we have to go with the lowest bidder. So if they get, let's say it's me, Levi, and O here, and all three of us are making a bid for JLU, right? And JLU has to buy the one that goes the lowest price. So maybe Nancy Pelosi would call all three of us, and I'll say, I'll charge you $100,000 for this bag of bolts. And then Levi says, I'll charge you $75,000. And then Bigo says, I'll get you a bargain. I'll give you $40,000. And all three of us split the difference. And you can see how easily this happens and how obvious it is, and they do nothing to do it. Our federal government in every part has to be stripped apart with only the bare minimum left. A lot of power has to go back to the states because local, smaller governments are more accountable to their local groups of people. For example, you might not be able to vote out a president or a senator that you really hate, but you can always vote out your mayor. That's one of the easiest things you do. And if you can vote out your mayor, then you can vote out your governor. And that's much easier to control. And then you can get rid of your governor much quicker. Further, our government must be forbidden from owning or trading stocks of any kind. If you have a child who likes candy and you have to have a bag of candy guarded, are you going to have it guarded only by small children who love candy and have no impulse control? No, because you're not an idiot. So it's about time we start doing the same thing with the number one economy in the entire world. Basically, through my three major steps of restoring the family order, by having children be born into loving homes, by healing the rifts in our communities, by strengthening the police in our community, as well as other providers to give us more security, by getting rid of both the causes of crime and the criminals themselves, by strengthening our border, because we simply cannot afford, you cannot save everyone, and it is a tough decision that you have to make, and by removing us both from we're not removing us, but from distancing ourselves from the endless rat race of chasing infinite growth in a finite world that globalism and economics leads to, and both removing the greedy oligarchs who at every step stop progress in our government. I believe that we could save our country. My vision is a call to discipline. It's a call to unity. It's to moral renewal. It cannot and will never be achieved through half measures or fleeting popularity. People will not like it. People will hate it. A lot of people, in fact, will be irritated with it. But long-term success calls for short-term suffering. It requires people, someone to go up there and know that they will be hated by their people, but loved by history, because you have to wield power unapologetically for the good of the nation. Too many politicians, and this really started with Ronald Reagan's unabashed populism, will happily accept dying as the savior of whatever they were. No one even remembers their name because, oh, they were so great, but nobody really knows about them. They gave us so much money, things were better then. But now our economy's in shambles because he gave everybody $3,000 5 times. Under my framework, where you're willing or someone is willing to just take the brunt, take the heat, trim the fat of our country, smash the oligarchical class, truly have a free market, not one which benefits. Capitalism is not when the oligarchs stop 99% of the population from enjoying the free market. I should be able to start a business. I should be able to get rich. And I would be, and I am, but I know that someone above me is going to try to stop me. And that is not correct. I shouldn't expect corruption going in. I shouldn't expect it. I shouldn't have to know that it's so widespread that it's a certainty. Under my framework of healing the home, and by healing the home, you heal the town. And by healing the town, you heal the city. By healing the city, you heal the country. Under this framework, America will rise as a beacon of strength, order, and justice. And whether we become admired by the world or feared by it, that is just something I'm willing to accept. Okay.
You done?
Holy smokes.
Damn. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie, that was really inspiring.
Holy smokes, man.
That was
Jeez.
really
I
inspiring.
like to,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna say one more thing about my community, and then I'm gonna provide the burning question that I had. One thing about the Hispanic community that I've come to notice, or well, yeah, I guess Hispanic community is that if you do not speak Spanish in a proper manner, or even at all, you are not considered Hispanic, or you are not
Mm.
considered a a type of Hispanic that seems accepting around the community.
Hmm.
And so that is something that is really troublesome for the Hispanic community because they have a lot of problems going on within there with whether it be legal immigrants or illegal immigrants. And illegal immigrants are the only ones that speak fluent Spanish and sometimes not a lick of English. So for them to bring somebody over into a space where it's English speakers only, and if that child grows up to only speak English and suddenly it's a problem that they only speak English but you weren't willing to teach them Spanish, but you weren't willing to teach them anything, it's just it's just a problem. It's just a huge problem within a community, and it kind of makes them distant between each other within the community. Like for me, for example, although I am partially Hispanic, I speak only a little bit of Spanish. Like the ones are I can't fully have a conversation with you in Spanish, but I know the basics enough to where I can say, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, I'm doing good," and this, and like say my name. I can say where I'm from, and geez, I freaking lost my thought. And the fact that like family, some of my family members actually on my father's side, my father is Hispanic. They definitely say that I'm not a part of the community due to the fact that I can't speak Spanish. But I'm like, being Hispanic, yes, it is the language, but at the same time, like my hair is curly, like I have the skin tone to match. And sometimes when I do get angry enough to speak Spanish, I'm able to speak it just as well as somebody who's learning out of a high school classroom. And yeah, my advice to those who believe in that type of manner is to just, man, it's usually the older individuals, and I have to go back to what O said about them dying out. It's just a fact. Like there's a lot of individuals, younger generations and individuals that are willing to accept the fact that you can't speak Spanish to and are willing to like introduce you to the idea of Spanish so you can feel included in stuff. So my advice would just, the older generation kind of just needs to, hate to say it, but die off because they're just the ones that are kind of holding us back a little bit. Brett, do you have anything to say
Mm.
or any questions?
Hello?
Yeah.
Accidentally got disconnected.
Do you have any
Do you
questions or
think that
anything?
your yes, directly to your point, do you think that your sort of wish for the older generation to die off is sort of how should I say? Honestly, I think it's a bit immature because if you cannot reach the older generation, you're never going to reach the new generation who agrees with them. Because just assuming that the older generation is going to die off and the new generation is just going to be super accepting of you and whatever you're going to talk about is not realistic. And that's not what happens in almost any case. Um, the new generation, they might be more accepting of certain things because those things are more common and things like that. However, a lot of people, right, take there's a lot of immigrant communities in America. Here's one. I live in Philadelphia, right? As I said, there's a lot of Chinese people and a lot of Italians. Um, the Italians, if you go by South Street, um, they'll be very friendly to you. But if they have something serious to talk about, they switch to the mother tongue because they don't want you to hear it, even if you're around. And sometimes they'll just switch for it to tell jokes and things like that because they want you to know that you're not part of their group. And if you aren't part of their group, then you know they don't really trust you. a lot of times in these immigrant communities, sort of leads back to the thing I was saying earlier, where people sort of, because of how hmm, the sort of slave mentality, the immigrant mentality, the struggle mentality, I'll say in general, that kept people safe, that kept our ancestors and forefathers alive and safe for uh centuries. That's hard to discard because if it worked that well for so long, you can't get rid of it. And a lot of times, honestly, to this day, it still goes forward. Um, for example, I, no matter what, even though I have nothing against, Caucasian people, I will never get in an elevator. Um, I will never get in an elevator without a camera, with a woman alone at all, especially a white woman. I just won't do it. I won't do it ever. Um, if I'm alone with a woman in a room and I don't really know her, I will open the door. A lot of times I'll refuse to meet up in them with them unless it's in public. Um, because honestly, there's certain things like I understand that you're upset that you want people to just accept you because from your perspective, you're one of them. They're your family, they're your friends. You are exactly what they are. Your blood is the same. You come from the same place. You listen to the same music and eat the same food. But by not speaking the language, you don't connect with them on a level that is deeper than just the language. Because when you speak Spanish to them, when you speak um, an immigrant's mother tongue, even if it's just a little bit, like you try to mix more words into it, if you learn and things like that, you're saying much more than the words you're saying. When you say hello to someone in English, let's say it's an immigrant, you say hello. But if you say, hello in Italian to an Italian, and you're Italian too, you're saying you're safe here. You're saying you're among friends, you're among family. Um, you know how to act, you know how to behave. It's okay. You don't have to give up your culture. You can be who you are. It's comforting. Um, and with the way that this country treats immigrants, and I know I spoke a lot about Mexicans, but I'm sure it's similar for Puerto Ricans too. Like when I say I want immigrants, I want to lessen immigration because we just can't afford it. There are genuinely large groups of people who have some sort of genocidal kick where they genuinely think that immigrants are less than and they hate them. They see them as animals and creatures. So anyone who speaks Spanish, it's a way to differentiate them from that oppressor class. Um, and that's sort of my thoughts on it. I think that sort of hoping that all those people who think that way die out in a certain way is not unironically, inadvertently wishing violence upon yourself, because what you are wishing for is not, in fact, the inclusion of yourself, but the exclusion of others. That's all I'm saying.
But you said that if I can't reach the older individuals, I wouldn't be able to reach the younger individuals. That's not, I don't necessarily think that's true though. Like I have said before, the older individuals have a mindset where they have grew up with that mindset and with what they have and aren't willing to change. It's not all older individuals, but it's most older individuals. And so the younger generation are, you're able to talk to them more openly about things, whether with the generation. So don't necessarily agree the fact that if I'm not able to reach an older generation, I'm not gonna reach the younger generation that follows.
Mm,
But
I see what you're
um,
saying.
mm-hmm.
yeah, because
I guess to put a just sort of a finer bow in, this can make sure our message is gotten across correctly. I where I'm coming from is the older generation you're saying has these beliefs and things ingrained in them from when they were child. Our generation is the younger generation for now. But what are you going to do when you run across people who were as old as you are, but like the older generation that exists now, grew up hearing the same things, believing the same things, wanting the same things? They're just not older than you anymore.
Well, hold on. I got something interesting to say about this, which I've
Okay.
noticed. My bad. I
you
kind of popped the bin.
no, you're good.
The folks
No,
in
no,
my
that was the end of my thought.
oh, all right. My folks going crazy right now. But interesting enough, I've noticed that a lot of younger people that does have that same thought process also can think for themselves individually. It's more when they get into a bigger group and out in the open where they kind of just go with the flow and move with the group versus when you get them individually. There's plenty of examples I have. Like the main one I have is from at work. Remember how I was telling you about how all these guys, one of the reasons, quote unquote, they didn't want to vote fuck them out. So it was like they didn't want their kids to have transgender operations and everything, and
Right.
that they don't like transgender people, and that, like, my son not finna grow up gay or whatever, right? And I was like, okay,
Right.
not being 18-year old getting a transgender, understandable. I feel like people should wait till they're at least 18 to get an operation or whatever, because they're still like kids and their brain isn't even developed. But then
Right.
each one of those members on my work line came to me after work. It was like I was just chilling, waiting for mom. They each individually came to me after work, and they all had differing opinions than the ones they told me when they was in the group together. And
Mm.
one of them being, his name is, it's a guy named Omar. He's 22. He's my age. At first, he was like, "My son, he's Hispanic guy. My son ain't finna grow up gay. My son ain't finna grow up thinking all that stuff normal." He's like, "Hell no, my son ain't finna do all that." Right? Next thing you know, after work, he comes up
Right.
to me. He's like, "Well, I don't care if my son is gay. I don't, he was like, I don't mind that. He's like, I just don't want him to grow up thinking that's the right way to think. I feel like because I told him, like, bro, once they get to like high school, that's on their own. They can figure out what the fuck they want to. I said you shouldn't be able to control them on what they like and how they like. He was like, I feel the same way actually. He's like, I feel like once my son's old enough to understand everything, then he can. I feel like he should be able to go out and like what he like, and I'm gonna love him just the same. And I was like, yo, why you press me with everybody else then if you acting like this now? He's just like, well, I just didn't want them to think I was weak or anything. I just wanted them, to think, let them know that I agree with them, but not all the way. And I was like, when I was asking y'all that, you didn't say that. That's him. I had another coworker, white man. His name is Cole. Uh, He's like an older guy. Cole is like almost 50, right? And Cole, he's a country guy. All his kids are grown, everything. His daughter's grown. He comes to me, hey, he's like, hey, big O, he said, just so you know, that thing about kids being gay, whatever. He's like, I ain't gonna lie, now that I'm an older man, I realized that stuff didn't matter. He said, I was just saying that because everybody's around. That's how I used to think. He said, now that I actually got through the day and thought about it, he was like, it really doesn't matter. And I just want to let you know that, I agree with you. I don't think you're weird for letting your kid decide what they want to be once they get to high school. He said, now that I think about it, it's not up to me, it's up to them. And there's been other cases in other discords where I just randomly join and they would be talking about this situation. And a lot of them would be agreeing on that thing, on that topic. But then when some of them leave, the rest of them is like, actually, I think this way. Actually, I think that way. So I feel like genuinely it is kind of like the older generation. And as they get older, they're able to, like, as we get older too, they'll be able to discern, like, all right, it really ain't even that deep, and I don't really got no saying it. Oh, Luke wants to come and speak.
Hi,
Oh, welcome to Levi's Final. Welcome to Levi's Final. This is a
thank you
final
for having
project
me.
that is being recorded, and will be watched by Levi's professors. We're talking about like
Well,
Yes.
any marginalized groups we're part of, and like how it feels, and like how we would do to
Yeah.
maybe fix our communities.
thank
Well,
you
We're
for
taking
geez.
this
having me.
seriously. Yep.
Well, geez,
Yep.
Brett, you
Thank
could
you.
have let me explain it since it's my
I was gonna
final.
It could
say,
be serious,
yeah.
it could be jokey. I guess
It,
whatever's
I
on
know.
your
yeah,
mind.
I just
yeah,
wanted to
just
like make
yeah,
sure
just
like you
yeah.
didn't come in
No,
joking.
just Luke, just say your name and say whatever you would like to say.
Well, my name's Luke. Clearly, I say I'm English,
Mhm.
so this is a lot. I'm in a whole different culture to everyone here. Everyone here's American. Um, but what I've seen, because I say my culture is a lot more reserved about, how they act and things like that. And in America's politics, their like communities and everything, it feels like it's very much a divisive thing of, if you don't agree with me, then we can't be friends. If you don't agree with me, then you're evil. If you don't agree with me, then so on and so forth. I say I've had multiple people that used to be really racist, but once they met the people, the actual culture that they hated, they realized, oh, it's not so bad. But when people demonize them, if the like, let's say Trump like Trump supporters get a lot of flack. However, they are the biggest like popularity in not popularity, population in America right now. Clearly, um, and I think that the divisiveness of people's disagreements needs to be quelled, and that's the way how we should move forward. But there's a lot of things like with kids getting transitional help. That if the idea behind not letting them get anything until they're 18, it doesn't make sense because your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25. So if someone wanted to be really evil, say, they could make the argument, well, you should not be able to do anything like that until you're 25 because you don't know who you are. You're not a full adult. You can't make decisions for yourself. And I just think that, again, we should let people live their life the way they want to live it. But we shouldn't put restrictions on people's, speech. I mean, again, in England, it's completely different. You could get put in prison for stating your opinion online. And that just isn't something that obviously anyone here agrees with, unless it's something hateful, of course. But again, from the outside looking in, it just seems like everyone needs to stop the whole vitriol towards different groups and acting as if they're the best group and they hate this other group for X, Y, and Z. I mean, there's a lot of history around hatred in America. It was basically made on slavery, and that's just a horrible thing. But again, back then, slavery, I mean, even now, slavery is still seen as quite the big, in the Middle East, in Asia, slavery is rampant. And I think we need to focus on those things. We need to focus on the whole world rather than our own countries. And things like women's rights, I believe, rather than arguing about what's going on in our own countries, we should be supporting women in these other countries that don't have nowhere near the amount of rights that our people in our countries do. And I think the more we think about it, if we can unite the world under one banner of everything through, you know, education, because no matter what you say, an educated person shouldn't be thinking, okay, it's logical that you'd hate this person because of their skin, race, gender, anything. Doesn't make sense. That's not how we're going to progress. And I think that rather than, let's say, hating, let's say you're from the suburbs and then, you hate the higher class. That's understandable because all of these race politics and but every single group politic right now, I wouldn't even say it's because of different races. I'd say it's a whole different. It's because of the classes. The higher class wants to keep the lower class arguing and bickering about everything, so they can keep control.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's what I believe. I don't think any of these issues that are facing us today are things that make sense. It's just things to keep us in check because other people want to control it. Well, the world is. Sorry,
Um,
I rambled on.
it's okay.
No, you're good.
I mean,
You're
it's
good.
good for everything.
I wanted to make two comments what you're saying. I actually agree with a lot of what you said, um, especially on things like women's rights and slavery. Slavery is still going on in America. Um, we just have exceptions to it so that prisoners are. If you go to prison and they're allowed to force you to work. It's illegal. They can make you a slave. In fact, it would be fully legal for those prisoners to be bought and sold in markets and things like that. However, no one wants to do that because of the taboo and everything. The second thing is the thing about the children transitioning and things like that. I think a lot of people sort of resist the main things I hear. If aside from like just the children, it's mainly the surgeries, anything irreversible, because children's bodies are still literally undergoing like puberty. It's a bit different than these sort of final stages of development that happens from about 18, 19 to 25. It's where you are essentially fundamentally a different person. Also, things like puberty blockers, which some people advocate for can have extreme harmful effects on you, where your body never properly develops, including your brain. And other things like the child will, their genitals will not be developed properly when they become adult, which can cause harmful effects. And many adults who have puberty blockers are unable to do things such as orgasm and things like that. And the chemicals that are used as puberty blockers are the same chemicals a lot of the times that are used to chemically castrate rapists in other countries. There is a limit to how open-minded we can be, because a lot of times we are actually causing direct harm here. If someone wishes to transition, it should definitely be something that should be done as an adult rather than a child, because if a child does it, and I'll just put this out there, right? If a child does a transgender surgery, a lot of times, and it used to be very rare, but nowadays it's happening more and more often. Parents who, and I can't believe I have to say this, unfortunately, they sort of like the aesthetics of having a transgender child, will pressure that child into doing the thing. I won't go as far as calling it grooming or anything like that, but it's definitely a form of cruelty. Um, because think of it like this, right? If in the wild, I'll say, in the common like population, trans people are about, like, they're less than 1% of the entire population. What are the odds that someone with 4 children has 3 trans children and one other queer child? Do you see what I'm getting at here? Um, you sort of have to measure sort of how, the things that you want to do. We cannot be so open-minded that we allow our brains to fall out. uh there are limits to things, and we have to, like, take those limits seriously. And we cannot push them this way and that, simply because it makes us sort of uncomfortable to face those things. For example, when a woman is alone in like an alley, and I walk and she crosses the street or hurries away, I'm not offended, because I know that even though I'm not dangerous, it's not a chance that she should take, and I wouldn't expect her to. I shouldn't. I wouldn't chase her down, and say, "How dare you?" You know what I mean? That's misandry. You're bigoted. You're things like that. You do not want to. Um, or when, here's another example. When a police officer, I'm talking to one of them, and they ask me to produce ID, and I have to go slow and pull, it out with 2 fingers and things like that, and they're nervous. I understand in my mind that's because they've probably seen someone shot, because they didn't do the procedure correctly, or they've even been shot at themselves. And if I did have something, that could kill them, like they'd just be dead, there'd just be nothing they can do. I understand that there comes a limit in our, common behaviors as adults, that we sort of have to take the bitter medicine that, um I'll oftentimes, the how should I say this? Oftentimes I find there's a drift that we are accepting the aesthetics of good rather than good in and of itself. For example, we talk about women's freedom. In America, a woman fresh out of high school, um, she will, in her even high school, what's it called? Shows, not shows, the career fairs. Is that what they're called? I believe. I've seen them online too. OnlyFans pop up things like that. Um, but a woman will have a very hard time becoming a surgeon or a chef. That's because women are in our country are, unfortunately, are flattered by modern feminism. They are said they are perfect, they are wonderful, they are powerful. However, if she would like to make something of herself, she can either be a porn star, um, or she can be essentially a softcore porn star. She becomes an actress, or she may remain in the house. If she would like to make something of herself, other than that, then she will face insurmountable obstacles, because she is flattered rather than empowered. A black man is strong, he's entertaining, so he can become a rapper. But if he does any kind of music, he'll still be categorized as a rapper, or he can be an athlete. But if you have a black man who's your surgeon, or you see one as a pilot, you know the sort of things he's gone through. Um, we are sort of we want to be accepting, but we don't actually accept anyone we allow people to be everything but themselves. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on so long.
It's fine. Luke, do you have anything else before we put you down? And
I was
We're gonna
just about
kill.
to ask. I was just, yeah, it's time for me to go. Um, well, actually, there was one thing I would like to say is that I do believe that a lot of the issues that we do face is the fact that we try and discredit our own nature as animals, and that's the thing. We are all animals. Yeah, of course, we're a lot smarter than most animals, but things like authority and hating authority is literally bred into us. A lot of the issues that face us with our health today is due to biological reasons, I would say. Things like let's say let's go back to trans people. A lot of people would find it offensive if you said that it was a mental disorder to have gender dysphoria, but to my knowledge, that is a medical. It's a medical problem, and we could trace that down to the genetics, but we don't. We don't want to actually look into these things. We don't want to get into the nitty gritty and try and help people. We just want to accept things as they are. And I do agree with you. Like puberty blockers, in my opinion, shouldn't be. I don't understand how. Yes, it will make you have the secondary sex characteristics of the gender that you don't feel like you are. However, it's one of those things where you can maintain these aspects of your body start doing different. If you're a transgender man, so if you transition from a woman to a male, you could get testosterone boosters, but just not, as you say, put on yourself on blockers. I'm not too well versed in the whole nitty gritty of it, but to my knowledge, again, it's just we could look at these things. I mean, we have CRISPR available now, genetic coding. And I think we should actually have a look at the things that are actually hurting so many people. Because yes, even though say transgender people are less than 1% of the population in general, it's still a lot of people. We've got almost 8 billion people in the world. That's still, it's a large like population, and it's just bad to kind of forget about that. But that's all I've got to say. I just think that we just need to stop thinking as of groups differently. I think we just need to, you know, think at the end of the day, we're all people and people should come together. But again, because we're animals, it'll never happen. We've got a very much
Mm,
clandestine mindset of, oh, you're this color. That makes it a bit different because I'm not used to seeing people of this color. Um,
mm,
I mean, I was brought up in a very, how would you say, a melting pot cultures. So again, I can understand a lot of these different cultures, but it doesn't mean that when I was younger I accepted any of it. And I think it comes with maturity, and you can't hate on someone until they understand everything about it, and then they make their own opinion. Then you know, but it's as I say, it's very much a clan warfare thing of you're different, I don't like that difference. Oh, it actually doesn't matter that much. I quite like the differences. You know, that's it. And then we should go forward with that. But thank you for having me. I will leave the stage now. Um, yeah. Um, bye.
All right, dog.
bye.
Oh.
Well, okay. My final question is a really convoluted one. We spoke about this in a class on Monday, and it's how would someone define the communities you are a part of just by looking at you?
Handsome,
Let
talented.
me actually let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. So let's take the Latino man. What what do you think is defines a Latino man?
Mm, I don't know if it's my place to
Call me
speak, but
Poppy a lot
if
for
I
the older ones.
I usually
That's not a
think
joke. It's
whenever I see Latino men, I know they're usually like proud. They are good providers,
Mm,
and they very much value family. That's how I
okay.
see them. Whenever I see them,
Okay. And so, what if also the negative aspects? They cheat a lot. They drink. Alcoholism is a top
oh,
priority for
I
them.
don't know.
They they beat exactly.
I ain't know about all
So
that.
what
one
if
thing I've
Conspiracy
heard
what if
about
what
Islander Latinos. I hear they all have like second families. Like they have
exactly?
like hidden second
So
Oh,
families.
exactly. So when you look at somebody who is a Latino man, and would you define that those negative aspects as well as positive aspects within their community? If that dude walked up and said, "I'm a Latino man,"
not really. I just like
but
Mm.
okay, like
I find if I'm racist or something like that, it doesn't come out unless I'm irritated with somebody. What's a good example for me? Honestly, let's say I'm dealing with like a white person or a Jewish person, they will be just another person in my book unless they do something that annoys me. And then if they do something like bad, like let's say they do something bad, like they punch me or they steal from me or like or they're rude or something. In my brain, I'll go, "Oh, of course they're acting like that. They're whites. I shouldn't have expected better
mhm,
from you." Like for example, I'm Muslim, and generally, I can deal with people who are like, let's say, atheists. There a lot of times, but if an atheist starts being rude to me, my head will snap back and I'll be like, "Oh, of course they're an atheist. I should have never even expected better of you. That's just like all you people are. You know what I mean? Like I'll sort of reset almost like in a defensive way to like this sort of hating the group. But
mm,
then if like once I'm not mad at the person anymore, I stop thinking like that. Sort of prejudice isn't like the default state. It's almost like a response. At least I find for myself.
okay. So how would you know someone is a Latino man?
you just said they walk up to
Um,
you and they said
yeah, they
like,
walk
"Hey,
up
I'm
to me.
No, I meant if they
Latino."
don't walk up to if they don't walk up to you, how would you know?
I mean,
I guess
you
How
like
just
would you
sort
know
of like,
accent. You. Oh, hold on,
if they don't
Joe.
have an
look at
accent? What
Latino
about their
people and
skin what
everything.
about their skin color?
I
Some Latino
wouldn't
men
I
don't have
wouldn't
They're
unless
light.
they told me.
Right?
Like I don't know.
Hello.
I guess you could assume by
I'm
their
talking about
look and how they look, but other than that, besides what they tell you, you probably wouldn't know.
I have an answer. You
Oh,
wouldn't know.
oh, go ahead.
It's based on however they feel themselves. You wouldn't
Thank
know unless you asked them.
you.
How about they
Thank
feel
you,
about themselves?
Joseph. Holy smokes. Oh my gosh, a good answer, bro. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You can have the
Dang,
most
bread.
What do you mean?
Mexican
How?
Your
What do you mean?
guy.
your
What do you mean?
answer
How
was
they feel
garbage,
themselves?
bread.
How do you
He's
mean? How
not.
do they feel themselves? And Joe, aren't you
Exactly.
also
However they
Latino?
identify it. You can have the most Mexican looking guy. You think, oh, that guy's definitely Mexican, but he's not. He could be from fucking Canada.
Thank
Like,
you. So
it's however they identify as themselves.
exactly, it's all in all, it's nobody, like you said, nobody would really exactly know unless you
Tell
go
them.
up to them, ask them, and have somebody tell you.
Like,
Yeah.
oh
And
yeah,
it's
I'm from here.
Not
Oh, I'm from
always though.
there.
Like
So
if you
how
see a
does that?
Somali, like they're Somali. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like you can definitely tell by looking at some people like where they're
some.
from.
Uh,
Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm back. I do want to say I just that purely because I'm ginger, right? That's a genetical feature of the Danish people. There are definitely genetic markers that we can see. You
Mm-hmm.
know, other people, I say Somalians are very distinct in how they look.
Mm-hmm.
Asian people are very distinctive in how they look. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is quite well known. However, I do feel like people, I don't know, it depends on how you see of where you come from. Again, I would say my genetics run back to, the old Danish times, but I sound English, but I've still got that the genetics in me.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how you define where you're from and who you're from. It's more of a cultural thing rather than genetics, because genetics you can't lie about. Culture is a different thing, I would say. But
Hmm,
yeah.
I agree. I agree. I
mhm.
definitely think you can tell usually like what group people are a part of by looking at them, at least with like moderate accuracy. Like some people are definitely like like look more Caucasian, or they look more Latino, or they look more black, or they look more whoever. However, you personally identify yourself, honestly, 90% of the time, or 98% even, just does not matter. Um, it doesn't matter how you feel in the morning, how you what you think you are. Like when people look at you, they will make a judgment about you, and that is who you are to them, unless they like interact with you and you prove them otherwise. And sometimes when you interact with those people, they'll just double down and be like, "Oh yes, exactly what I expected." If you are Latino, then you're Latino, and that's just sort of the way it is. If you're an Arab, you're an Arab. If you're white, you're white. You're black, you're black. You're Asian, etc., etc. Um, you know, uh when I Joe, your answer when I heard it, it felt almost like, I don't know, like wishful thinking almost, like you sort of don't want to be defined by your racial identity that people assume about you, which something I can definitely empathize with. Definitely. One time when I was a kid, I wanted to be an
Oh
author,
my.
and a teacher said, "Oh, you're going to be the best black author ever," and it stuck with me that she said black author instead of author. Period. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because that's almost like a qualifier. Like, I'll never be the best author because white people are already authors, but I'll definitely be the best black one, you know? So you sort of want to be not a black man or a white man or whatever when someone sees you. You just want to be
You
a
just want
man,
to be a
or you
man.
don't even want to be that.
Yeah.
You just want to be a human being.
Before
But
you
that's
are
not the way
any
it
other
is.
thing.
Exactly.
Perception sucks, man. But
It really that's that's it. That's all I have for everybody. That's my final project, a sense of community and everything.
appreciate you. Thank you for
Woo!
coming out.
Thank you,
Sending
Did you
Levi.
end it?
Thank you
Did
for
you end
having
it?
us.
uh